live that people read.
Can you believe it? We did this the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, I know. And then you sort of think, it's like, why does she always look so surprised to see another sold out venue?
Yeah. Yeah, let's compare us to Taylor Swift. I think we're there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, we have pretty similar to the same number of people, I'm thinking. But in the meantime, folks, we are thrilled that you are here. My buddy Zach went Italian tonight in regards to his drink of choice.
Peroni.
And I'm staying at Philadelphians, as you know, with our weird accents, enjoy our water. And so this... and you're seeing it, scoop of water. So, folks, we're thrilled to be here. We get to chew on another case study tonight and have some fun doing it. If you happen to be joining us on Facebook or Facebook Live, beautiful. We're thrilled that you're here. If you're watching us on LinkedIn Live, that's great too. We're not the judgy type. Sweet. Perfect. You're exactly where you should be. And if you're watching on YouTube Live, that's money. We ain't playing favorites, but we're really glad you're anywhere you're here. Just makes us happy. So we are delighted. Zach, what the hell are we doing here tonight anyway?
I don't know. Well, apparently we're alienating everybody on LinkedIn. I got asked last time after our last show, because last week I was drinking a draft, so it was like a dark beer, or not a draft. What's it called? A stout. So it was a very dark beer. And somebody asked me, like, why do you because everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people know that I exercise and I was like former professional athlete and like to be healthy and that kind of stuff. So like, why do you drink? Like, why do you after I finish working out, I have a meal, and then I have one in the evening, right? And you know what they say, one a day keeps the doctor employed. So that's it's just I don't know. It's been something I've done forever. Even when I competed, even in like weight class sports, I would have one, whatever it was. I'd have one after dinner, and then that was it.
See, as a also as a world class athlete, in my storied past, my sports were bowling and racquetball. Now, it probably would have been good to have had you around when I was younger, just in the sense that it was like, right, because that one part had one that was trickier for me.
The one. So not everybody can. Not everybody can. I'm not advocating to do it.
I had 40, and so
40. Yeah, somewhere between 1 and 40 would have been better.
Tough when you're leaving the racquetball court or the bowling alley and you're 20 pounds heavier the next day after your fitness. You know what I mean? Your fitness quest.
Life's about balance, right? Racquetball's hard. You're moving around a lot. Racquetball's tough, right? So you lose a lot of
welts alone.
You lose a lot of water because you're sweating. Electrolytes, you got to replace.
So I had to get that all back in me, and apparently there was a real rush for me to do that. So therefore, I'll leave the one to you. And folks, if you happen to be joining Zach with that tonight, great, do it. If you are here, drop a note in the comments. We want to know you're around, because if you're here and you're in the comments, then we get to say hi to you. And the fun part of what we get to do is we're always including you. So we have fun with case studies. Zach is a business legend, building businesses, coaching businesses. I love that face. I think so.
Keep going. Keep talking.
Oh my God, right?
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you.
Wait a minute. Now we do have a rock star here. All right. I got to look alive. Hey, Audrina, nice having you here. You're awesome. Hello back. And the fact is, yes, I'm fawning all over Hubbo, but the fact is, business legend, coach, speaker, course creator, consultant. I get to communicate. And one of the fun parts of what we get to do together is our combined business acumen, the ability to be able to coexist in companies, lead companies, generate revenue, create systems, structures, and be able to help others to communicate in order to move the business needle. If one of us doesn't have a handle on a business situation the other of us usually does. And the great part is, and if we don't, that's also way cool too, because that's where we use you. So folks, anybody out there, we want your input. We want your feedback. It matters. And what we've also been doing is galvanizing people that are watching, listening, blogging, writing to submit examples of case studies that matter to them. So folks, we encourage you, if you are here with us live or watching the replay, keep in mind, you could submit a case study as well too. Is there something happening if you're an entrepreneur that's triggering you, that's bothering you, that you can't get past, or that keeps coming to you that you can't seem to solve, or that you're not consistent with the solutions? Drop us a note. DM either Zach or myself so that we can get that on and we can include all of you. So, Zach, should we show them what we want to get together with tonight? Or do you want to go right back to the
I think let's do it. Let's just jump right in.
I love it.
I like this case study today because it's a little bit different. And we had a few people submit a couple pretty cool little case studies and questions and that kind of stuff. And the reason that we picked this one is because it was just a little bit of a different topic, a little bit of a different feel than some of the other ones. And we don't want to be talking about the same thing every night. We want to keep it somewhat fresh. Obviously, still within the world of business. We'll get into some crazy topics maybe down the road. But for now, we want to keep it business focused and be able to bring a lot of value. And I know that as we go through this case study, there'll be a lot of similarities and takeaways into different industries. This one again is in the construction, home improvement industry. There are home improvement and project management. You know, managing cash flow, customers, and contractors, that kind of stuff, materials, right? There is like software development or IT and that kind of stuff, right? So there's a lot that you can take away from this one.
Hey folks, we're having a little bit of a technical situation here. Zach, are we getting you back?
Did I drop?
For a moment, yes.
This is so there's a storm a brewing, and we use Starlink for our internet, and Starlink is amazing, except when there's a big storm coming. But it's doing really well, actually. It's right over top of us.
You did great.
It's actually doing really well. But anyways, I don't know what y'all missed, but we're excited for this one because there's going to be a lot of takeaways into other industries. We're focusing on the construction industry today, but it's going to be a lot of project management, cash flow, dealing with subcontractors. You're, as a business owner of a small business, where should your focus be when you're dealing with, when it's a project focused business, as opposed to kind of the flywheel continuous store of products and services. So yeah, I know I'm excited about this one.
I love it. Folks, we're going to give you the situation right now.
All right. I run, and by I mean Mike Warbeck. I run a kind of a small construction firm. We do custom patios, gutters, windows, and some siding. We have a pretty steady stream of projects, but we're constantly dealing with cash flow problems. The customers seem to always delay payments, and our expenses for the materials and labor are high. This has led to difficulties in managing some of our payroll and other costs. We've considered taking out loans, but debt scares the hell out of me. Debt scares the hell out of a lot of people. Yeah. I will say, to start, debt isn't a bad thing. It's just how you manage it. I'm not going to get into that because I'm not a financial advisor, but I would maybe get some insight into how to use debt appropriately for these types of things. But to start, who wants to start? You want to flip a coin? Rock, paper, scissors? Was that you flipping a coin?
That was me.
That's how you flip a coin, like that? You don't use your...
Do we have like flip it in the air?
Yeah, but how do you flip a coin in the air? We need to have a separate show and show you how to flip a coin.
All right, sorry. Wait. All right, rock, paper, scissors.
All right, ready?
Yeah.
Ready. 1, 2, 3, go. You got to do it in the camera. I'm scissors. Okay. You go first, John. You go first. That wasn't scissors. That was like laser pointers.
I didn't want to go first.
That was laser pointers. You go ahead. You go ahead. Start us off.
All right, fine. I'll try not to embarrass myself, but I think I already did. However, here's what we'll say. Let me see if I can redeem myself. small companies. And before we hit the live button, I had had a couple of examples and then conveniently forgotten my own. So I'll lead with the fact that, look, if you are a one-person company, if you are a small group, subcontractors, 1099ers, if you are lucky enough to have some paid staff, it's amazing the similarities that you can have. I love when Zach just said that debt isn't a bad thing. You just have to be good at managing it. Way easier said than done. I got to tell you, I'll speak to the experiences that I had being part of a small company, being part of a larger company that was really new, and then running my own company. Here's what I realized, which is reserves of some sort are really important, really important. And the first things I think about are, if you are navigating business loans, if you are navigating any sort of a reserve, my number one suggestion, which most companies don't do, is to have reserves put aside. Primarily because nothing scares off clients than getting dunned for money. So if they're not paying within 5 days or 10 days and they're getting leaned on, like it's like you're the credit bureau, that scares off customers. But you still need the funds. You still need the funds. So one of the very first takeaways I would say in terms of the communication process, communicating the fundamentals, is that it's every department's responsibility to be aware of the fact that cash flow has to be coming. This is not a case where the salespeople dismiss it because that's not their job. Oh no, that's the accounting people's job. Every department should be aware of the importance of why cash flow matters. Not everybody has to become a collections agent. However, everyone has to be aware of the importance so that certain departments are either deflecting or ignoring situations, because coming at people as if there's a problem creates a problem. Staff, if they are part of a company, do not want to feel under such a pressure cooker that if we don't make this collectible, that I won't get paid. And that's how you lose employees, because they feel like that they're part of a sinking ship. So the number one thing I would say is, if you're able to navigate reserves, have them. Because reserves enable you to buy additional inventory, enable you to pay your employees, enable you to, in essence, begin the path of business growth, so that you're not waiting for every dollar to come in before you're able to come out. So, but as part of your company culture, as part of the communications process, everyone should be aware of the importance of collecting. Department meetings, we may come to your department to help us in the collections process, because it helps us to grow as a company. So right off the bat, I'd have a reserve if I could. If I can't have a reserve, I'd keep everybody in the loop that it matters. Not in a panicky situation, but if we want to grow this business, if we want to be in a stronger place than we were 6 months ago, it's important that we collect what is billed. So that's a starting point for me.
Yeah, you got to get paid.
You got to get paid.
It's a weird thing with business, right? You got to get paid for what you do. For me, where I'd start, I mean, first of all, why I would start with the cash flow problems, because cash flow problems, you solve those, they solve a lot of other problems. Okay, kind of a cascading effect, right? So if I'm looking at this, he's a small business owner. I'm assuming he is probably marketing. He's probably also project management. He's also, vetting ID. I mean, he might be using, unless he has a W-2 crew, which if he's a small business right now, I doubt it at this point.
Probably does, he does, right?
But he's dealing with subcontractors, so he's constantly vetting subcontractors. And then the problem that you will face here is, if you are relying on subcontractors, and you have a few, there's a few projects where, maybe they don't get paid right away, or you have to pay them in different increments than was initially decided on. That type of information gets shared with other contractors. It's a smaller community than you might think, right, of different subcontractors, especially if you're in a city or in a region that's not super densely populated or anything like that. But even that, that information gets communicated, right? So now you have some higher level subcontractors maybe saying no to you, and you have to bring in, you're just getting who you can to get some of these projects fulfilled on, right? So with that being said, you're having to wear so many hats. So what usually will slip is purchasing materials, making sure you're vetting the right type of subcontractors, making sure that your processes are being fulfilled, because you have so many other things going on that you can't stay on top of them. It's like, hey, did you make sure that you collected? Did you make sure that you gained referrals? Did you get referrals from the customers and clients? Did you make sure that you reminded them intermittently as we hit certain stages of the project to make sure that payments were made on time? Then also I'd look at what is your payment process as well. Like, there's a lot that goes into this. Like, what is your payment process? Do you use like a third party finance company?
Right.
If you only have one, maybe look at a few more and make them compete against each other, because usually if you only have one, they're kind of, you become almost a commodity to them, and then they can push you around a little bit when it comes to like the chops, which is them taking money off the top from your deals. But I would look at, where's the cash flow problem truly coming from, other than you just have a cash flow problem. And a lot of times in this case, if you are dealing with subcontractors, especially if you haven't had time to vet the subcontractors, or maybe you're just not attracting solid subcontractors, you will look at, like, they're running their own business, right? So they might add a few extra pieces of equipment or material to the bill and put it on their own trailer, type of thing, right? And that's not, again, they have to look after themselves, so you can't really. No, you can. I mean, that's shady. I was trying to be politically correct, but no, I'm not. That's shady as shit. They shouldn't be doing that, but it can happen. It can happen, and that's because you're not vetting them properly. Maybe you had to get them last minute, and also you're focusing on a lot of different disciplines within the home improvement. Like, you're doing custom patios, siding, roofing, window. Like, now you're dealing with a lot of different places to get materials too. You're dealing with a lot of partners. Like, a lot of your cost of goods sold is going to be a little bit different. You're always looking at different vendors to get different. Lots of shady people out there. Yeah, that's very true.
Rosalie McKenzie, welcome. That's exactly right. We're not judging, but I'd have to say you got a good point.
But it happens. But you have so many fires to put out, and you're so many irons in the fire that you can't vet those people properly. Maybe you can't go out and look after different, or go out and hunt for different finance companies. And you can't look at every project. You can't look at the bill for every project or the plans for every project. Okay, this patio, these are the dimensions of the patio. This is the plan to put it together. This is what we need to do. These are the steps we're going to take. Here's the materials that we need. You don't have the time to look at that and be like, okay, this makes sense. Okay, now let's compare this to the receipt, right, from the contractors. And then, are the contractors themselves, are they the ones responsible for getting the materials, right? Or is that you? So it's at this point, you really find out where that cash flow, what is that? Again, we brought this up before, that what is that critical point? Do a critical point analysis. What is that critical point where you're starting to bleed the most cash, and where is it slowest to come in? Is it the materials and everything? That's good. You're not overspending, you're not over purchasing, right? Because then if you are over purchasing, then you have to find a place to store everything, and that's another expense, right? So if you are over purchasing, then that's it. And then put in a process, right, to vet what the plans are for each project. All right, this is the size of the house. This is how much siding we're going to need. Here's hourly for the contractors, or maybe they're just per project, whatever their rates are, and then get the receipts, and then compare those two, right, and create a process around that. And then eventually, when you have that process, you go to hire a project manager for yourself. When you don't have cash flow problems, you have a process you can just hand them, hand to them, so at least they have a place to start. So if that's not the case, though, then it's, what is your collection process? Is it that you are relying on customers to just primarily pay out of pocket, which is tough for a lot of people these days? So they might be a little bit slower to pay just based on their own cash flow, right? So what type of payment plans do you have? What are the expectations up front? What does your contract look like as far as when they're expected to pay? And then again, if that all looks good, then it's okay. Primarily my demographic is people who are struggling financially, and maybe I need to offer some sort of finance planning. So go start to vet some of these finance companies. There's a lot in the space. There's, Green Sky being a big one, but don't just go after one. You want to make them compete, because if they find out that they're the only ones that have your business, right, they're going to lock you in at some ridiculous rates, and then they can increase the rates even. So you, out of nowhere, you'll find out that you're paying, 12% interest off of every deal. And then you're like, they have even worse cash flow problems because you're losing 12% of every deal off the top. So make sure that you're vetting those really carefully. And then as well, with the subcontractors, setting a very clear expectation of, okay, this is our, if they're not using financing, this is our expectations for payment from the customer. So as the foreman or lead for the team, right, I need you to check in. Yeah, renewal rates are brutal too. Yeah, 100%, Rosa. But there's a lot that you have to focus on, right? Like now you have to also focus on renewal rates. Like there's a lot that goes on. So find what that critical point is. Where are you bleeding the cash, right? Plug up that hole. But there's a saying where you want to solve every problem twice. You solve the problem immediately, you stop the leaking immediately, and then you come back and solve it again to make sure that that leak never happens again. And there's no other leaks that happen anywhere else, right? So solve the problem once, right? Nip that in the butt, but then come back and solve it again. Put the processes in place. Realize, okay, my next big move to grow my business and to avoid future cash flow problems is I need a project manager. I'm out doing all this stuff all the time. I'm having to market. I'm having to work with clients. Maybe I'm on the jobs, right? But find out what that thank you, I appreciate it. But find out what that thing is first. Put the process in place, hire for it, right? And then rinse and repeat, because there's always going to be other holes, other leaks, right? But do the same thing. Okay, I plugged up this problem. I have the process in place where I am checking material needs for every job now. So I'm not overspending on material. I'm not having to pay for housing over, the overflow of material, right? Waste, right? Or we've capped the waste, and we plugged up that hole. So now let's look at financing, right? And it might be the other way around, but find out right now what's that critical point where you're losing the most cash, and then plug that hole, and then don't let it happen again. That would be my initial. That was a lot, but that was my initial thoughts.
Yeah, but you boil it down to a couple of very key things. I love that sense of plug the hole and then plug it a second time in regards to making sure that it doesn't happen again, which is so important. I love that. I'm going to add two more things, which is, so these problems I've encountered in a company of one, in a company of many. I have worked in the B2C space successfully and the B2B space. So television companies, media outlets, home service companies, and my own communications company. So it's not the size of the company that changes the scope of the problem, right? Because think about it, folks. If it's more than just you, you've got to be able to, as a business leader, forecast properly. For example, what do you think you're going to generate revenue-wise? The reason it is important to be accurate and to be able to stay on top of it, that impacts your hiring. That impacts the resources that you buy. It impacts your staffing. It impacts your ability to keep the lights on. Do you know what wrecks a forecast, wrecks business growth? Nothing wrecks it faster, not collecting. And so you're spending all this time forecasting, communicating with your team, imparting your culture and what we've got to do. and then you don't get paid. And then you realize we can't afford the people that are on our team. We can't afford to pay them. I've seen it. We can't afford to buy the resources that we plan to buy. More equipment for the next job. More, we just took an estimate and we just got this huge project and they want to begin next week. Well, what the hell are we going to buy the stuff with? It's like we're tapped. Nothing shuts momentum down like a poor collection model. So the forecasting allows you to see what's possible. You stay on top of that, but collections will kill you. I remember for me, I'll give you an example. So for myself, I was working for a television company. And I still can feel this. It felt like a body blow when I didn't get paid by somebody, right? I literally remember that feeling. I remember that, and it was awful where they just refused to pay me. I never saw it coming. I still remember the dollar amount. It was like $35,000 or something like that, right? And in the life scheme of things, you're like, okay, but still ugly, but whatever. It almost killed me. I was going to quit. I was like, I'm busted. It was and this is like in the day and age where they reverse commissions on people. But it also impacts a company's ability to either carry out the plans that they had promised or to grow. So somebody has to care about collections, and they have to care about it in advance. In a perfect world, you're hiring project managers, you're hiring a collections department. The problem, though, and this is with businesses, this is why I say you've got to communicate this to everyone. So often, the salespeople would literally dismiss it to the accounting people. Oh, no, that's the accounting people's deal. And I'll just make up a name, Bob the accountant. Have Bob call whoever. Problem is, the companies often aren't going to worry about Bob from accounting calling. And so you don't get paid. Payroll is delayed. Salaries are impacted. Your ability to hire is impacted. Your ability to keep staffing is impacted. Your ability to generate business is impacted. And so with that being said, and I'm looking at Tommy Kenyon's comment about, like I said, setting up events, paying for equipment, jobs just grind to a halt unless you've got the reserves. And in this day and age, not everybody has them. So, like I said, I remember, like I said, work for television companies where, like I said, it was just, it was such an ugly process. So, and the fact is, right, it's always somebody else's responsibility until the fire alarms are going off and you're like, okay, the client's not answering the phone anymore. Now what are we going to do? We've got future jobs in play and we can't buy the materials to move forward for the job. So that's why I repeat, it is imperative that not that everybody becomes collection agents, that everybody is aware of the importance, or even better, understands the process. Here's how this is going to go. We are net 10, net 30, have a very full understanding. Clients pay when they feel like it, when they take every bit of rope that you give them. And so you've got to understand, you may say, we're net 10. The clients will be like, well, that's nice. But if you want the business, we're net 60. So reserves, communicating the process to the clients, to your teams, that everyone is aware of what's going on so that things don't escalate out of hand. And then all of a sudden you're plugging those holes and chasing after people, and Zach, you alluded to it before, that sense of it's like word gets around if people aren't getting paid. You know what I mean? Word gets around. Slow pay, no pay, problem with that. People get it. So, and people talk. So with that being said, it's like, it's really important that everyone understands from a culture perspective that nothing moves, companies don't grow if we're not collecting what we're billing. We have to. And we may need to include you in on the process. It's the last thing I want to do. When I'm talking to my teams, it's the last thing I want to do is even have the conversation. The last thing I want to do is take a salesperson, an executive, a sales manager, a project. The last thing I want to do is take them off of, to me, what's a forward-facing job, to walk backwards, to collect. But it's got to be done. It's got to be done. Because, again, all growth comes from the revenue that's coming in.
Well, and it's interesting with collections, it's the increased likelihood that a customer or client will pay on time happens to start with your marketing. It starts with your marketing, because is somebody more likely to pay you on time if they trust you, right away? And that's what marketing is, right? It's gaining trust before the product gets to your doorstep, or before the service is fulfilled, or before the project is fulfilled. So those marketing steps should be ingrained throughout the whole process. The whole process, right? So if you're a company who doesn't have great reviews, you don't have great testimonials out there, or you have very few, right? And you got picked solely on price, right? They're not going to trust you, and they will hold back payment until they know that their patio can hold up to their July 4th party. Right? More likely to happen, right? But if you have that front-loaded trust,
right,
people are more likely to pay you before the project is even done. Because then if you do have the trust, if you do have that pool of proof, so to speak, then people are, to Tom Kenyon's, he just had this conversation come up in his head when setting up events, paying for equipment and overhead. If you have a huge pool of proof ahead of time, right, and you've developed that trust through your sales process, through the marketing, right, their interactions with your team, right, they have a project manager showing up to their door, or you're going to their office to plan the event, or to plan their new patio or their siding, and they feel like, oh man, I'd trust this person with my kids. Like I would trust this person with my life, right? They're much more likely to say yes when you say, okay, and because of that, we really want to make sure that we do an amazing job, right? And we want to make sure that we can get the top materials, and we have the best contractors working on your project. We have a policy where it's half up front, half after the job's done. And if you have that pool of proof and you've built that trust up front, they're more likely to say yes to that. But you can't do that unless you have that. You can't do that unless you have all the testimonials and you have this trust built up front. And that trust is being snowballed throughout your sales and fulfillment process. And then they will send referrals too.
So I love this. So like I said, if we walk this backwards, so say you're a company and it's August, so we're going to say it's the beginning of August and you're working out, say, your fall campaign. What systems, I have a couple thoughts on my end. What systems would you put in place for a company if, say, they're starting, I don't mean starting their business now, but say turning over a new leaf of efficiency, something like that, right? So that, hey, we're going to not be as reactive in this process anymore. We're going to plug. What would you say would be the first couple of things that you think that would make sense to do in the process rather than just wait for the next situation to come up? Would it be talk to the customer first? Would it be to talk to your team first, your subcontractors? What would you do?
It would be the customer. They'll have the most unbiased, and especially if there's a little bit of time that's gone by. So if there's something that upset them or whatever it is, give them a little bit of time, give them a week. But talk to the customer. And that's the same with any industry. Talk to the customer. On our side of things, we think that we understand their perspective, right? And some of us do because we've been in their situation before. We've had to buy a roof before, right? And we know the difference between, a contractor that we really like to work with and that we trust, and we, if they could build the house that you'd let them, sort of thing. But and then we know on the other side of that too, we understand that. But for the most part, if you've been in business for a year and a half, you're seeing things from your side, right? You need to see things from their perspective, and then you'll see that there's things that maybe you've added into the process or taken out of the process that did you more harm than good. And you're going to see that, right? Maybe you skipped a step when it comes to laying out the plans and make sure that you actually fulfilled on what the customer actually wants, especially if you're dealing with something customized, like the patio in this case, and even siding and windows too. I mean, those are things. Those are very, the neighbors are going to talk. If your windows and siding sucks, the neighbors are going to talk, and there's a thing keeping up with the Joneses.
Well, I'm going to talk,
and it's not a good feeling, right? So it makes you even worse. But anyways, you'll talk to the customer, and you'll see that you missed some things. Most likely, if you don't have a consistent process of getting customer feedback, like if you don't have a customer service team that isn't just dealing with issues on hand, if you're not being proactive, and because not every customer wants to call and complain, they're just like, whatever, I'll just deal with this and I'll get another contractor to come and clean up the mess afterwards. But if your customer service team, if you have the process of maybe following up with customers, days, weeks, months afterwards, and getting their feedback, right, and if they do have a great experience, getting those referrals and those reviews, right, but you'll get a lot of information. That data that you can get from a follow-up process with your customers is huge with being proactive with dealing with problems, but also not even just problems, but how can you incrementally improve going forward, right? If you're not growing, you're dying, sort of thing. So how can I incrementally improve? How can we improve our process? How can we, decrease, the fundamental cycle times, which is from purchase to completion? What can we do to, even if we cut it by a day, that means a lot to some people, right? It's a 2-week project. We cut it down by a few days. It means a lot. And then that's over a year. I mean, if you cut down a bunch of 2-week projects down to 10 days, that's another 10 projects you can do a year, right? So those little incremental steps. So it's got to be the customer, and then creating the processes to be proactive with getting that feedback from the customers. Because to Rose's point, they'll send referrals too, but they're busy. People are busy, right? They're not always going to know it, or you're not always going to be top of mind, right? But if you follow up with them, they're like, oh yeah, no, it was really amazing. Oh, by chance, because we able to provide you a great service. By chance, do you know anybody else who's maybe looking for siding, roof, windows, or a patio, or whatever it is? Like when we were there, we saw your neighbor's patio was falling apart, whatever. Now I'm just talking shit, but you know what I mean, right? Is putting those little things in place. But again, in this case, if you're a one-man show, right, and maybe you don't have that, right, you have to find out what's going to be the highest value activity for you to do, right? And talking to the customers is always up there.
I love it. And as I was going to say, and the theme that you are laying in place, which to me is a central theme, period, is it's always an element of being proactive. Always. Now, as you're saying that, and I'm just being reminded of the simple fact, as we talked about in the beginning, and it's just the most basic of common sense, you do a job, you get paid. This isn't charity. This isn't asking for favors or call-ins or whatever. This is typically the way things work. You do a service. We provide advertising, communications, patio, siding, roofing, whatever. Well, then you in turn pay us, and that's typically how it works. So in the communications, in this, obviously it's different. It's the same theme. It's different messages to different people, to the customers. In terms of speaking first, it is a matter of, hey, look, the expectations for us are we're going to come in and we're going to crush this. We're going to deliver an amazing experience for you. That's the expectation. We're going to stay with you every step of the way to make sure we do exactly that, because the only way we're going to know that is you telling us that. And so we're going to keep checking in, and we're going to keep. So as you keep checking in with the customer, you get the opportunity to, as Zach said, ask for referrals, remind people of next steps, remind people of your process, and you're earning it based upon you're exceeding their expectations. And there's no bad surprises. When you are talking to your teams, you're not acting desperate or needy. You're simply bringing up the point, the way business grows. We forecast, we execute, we deliver, we get paid. That's how it works. That's how business works. It's pretty in that regard. And so there's not that many steps to remember, but all of those are critically valuable. And we can't fall short in the forecasting. You know, the project management, the execution, I think I added an extra step, the execution and the collections of it, which means be aware. All of these things have to happen for a complete job. And so to garner more jobs, each of those steps have to happen. We may bring you in, but here's the way the system works. Talk to your clients, stay with them, make certain there's no bad surprises, so that people aren't feeling internally that you're dumping responsibilities on them that they don't think are theirs. You know, well, I'm not the collections person. I've heard that happen from a manager side, from a salesperson side. Why you have me collecting? I'm not the collections, but you know, again, it's just being proactive internally and externally, because when you're playing catch up, hey, did anybody realize that so-and-so didn't pay? Well, you better call them. That's the last thing you want. Terrible.
There's something to your point, and actually Rose's earlier point too, which is, you know, it's always someone else's responsibility. In a small business, if you have people that are saying that, like that's the reddest of red flags for me. Like they're gone like immediately. If someone said that's not my responsibility, like you're gone. Especially if we're a small business, like you can't have that. If you're a small business, you need to hire and you need to ingrain, or at least you know, help foster, you know, a very like entrepreneurial mindset, Like it's not my responsibility, right? We're growing a business. Right. And I need you to have that mindset, that startup founder mindset, especially if they are like a subcontractor, because technically they have their own business. They have their own LLC, that they're a business owner. So as you're bringing people in, right, they have to have that entrepreneur mindset. They have to, right? I'm a manager. It's not my responsibility. It wasn't on that thing that you made me sign when I started. It wasn't on there. So no, I'm not going to do it. It's like, all right, you just made my decision really, really easy. But I mean, but it's also, you can't blame it on them at that point. As the leader, that's on you, because you didn't hire for it. You didn't foster that.
That's it.
You didn't set that expectation really clearly. So it is on you as the leader. It doesn't mean that they're not a dickhead, but it's on you for a leader for hiring a dickhead. And then in this case, if we're looking at this case study, he does a lot of different disciplines, right? There's roofing, there's siding, windows, and then the custom patios. Some of them you can say they're similar, right? Siding and roofing. Okay, you know, fairly similar, right? From somebody who doesn't completely understand the ins and outs of what it takes to do siding and roofing. They're fairly similar, right? But windows, custom patios, those are very different disciplines, so to speak, right? So as you grow, one thing I would say is don't totally like decentralize and make, so okay, we have the finance department over here, they're over all finance, and then we have sales, they're over all sales of all the, you know, window, custom patio, and all these types of jobs. I would create like smaller teams work more efficiently than bigger decentralized, I don't talk to anybody else except other people in finance or other people in sales, right? You should have these smaller you know, kind of high performing teams that focus on each discipline separately almost. And again, roofing, and in this case study, I would put roofing and siding together, and then I would have custom windows or window replacement, and then I would do the custom patios. And then, because that way you're much less likely to get that, oh, this is somebody else's problem. Like, no, you're a small team, you're a small startup entrepreneurial team that does what they need to do to service the customer properly, to get the sales in the door, to collect and find the best, you know, deal for both the company and the customer when it comes to financing options. And like that's up to you. And you have like these small teams, and then you as the leader, you're setting expectations, you're letting them kind of run, set their own goals, and you're there to hold them accountable to those things. But I would either pick one. What is your most lucrative right now? What is your, lowest cost, highest return, sector right now, whether it's custom patios or roofing or whatever it is. And I would start to develop that team there, right? Once you get cash flow positive and you're not like you plugged up all the holes, you have the processes in place and all this kind of stuff, right? But I would have a team that focuses on that, right? And keep that, foster that entrepreneurial mindset and set those expectations up front. And when you're hiring, that's something that you need to look for, is hiring, especially in this type of business, and until you're like an Anderson, right? They're huge, they're $1 billion+ company,
right?
A little bit different, but if you're staying small and nimble, use that to your advantage, right? Don't decentralize. Get small. Keep those teams small. You have a customer service person, a couple of customer service people. You have a couple sales people, right? You have somebody like a project manager managing the contractors, right? And keep them nimble, right? Keep them nimble and keep them communicating. You have to foster that.
Zach, you're bringing us something. So in the midst of my career at working with large organizations, $1 million or multi-million-dollar client projects, layers upon layers as regards to corporations, how to construct teams within teams was a never-ending project. Like, do we build a team around a client category? Do we build a team around geography? Do we build a team around whatever the medium could be, whether it was television specifically or radio specific or one of each in Philadelphia? And so there was this constant sort of build and rebuild in regards to the ways to optimize teams. And when you were talking, one of the things that was coming to my mind was what I really liked what you were saying. And what I would also add would be this. I think one of the ways that you could now put killer teams together right now would be literally maybe they wouldn't all necessarily need to be in one category, but it could be in essence have certain people that are from the sales crew. And I don't mean everybody. I don't mean just the good ones or just the one. I'm just saying a couple of salespeople, project manager, collection person. You're the person that is handling the nuts and bolts. If it's a B2C project, like you're talking about, like patio, like who's ordering the supplies, who's showing up on duty. I feel like one of the ways that you could do this to optimize efficiency would be to, rather than silo departments, it's the exact opposite. Within organizations, pulled together by, whether it's by account or by a series of accounts, so that nobody is getting overwhelmed, but there are people, there are arms that can handle all of it, rather than the salespeople here, the service people here, the project managers out there, the HR people over there. Do you know what I mean? And I feel as if in terms of the communicating of it, you could do this in a number of ways where it is easier to keep the communications going, so that when you are speaking to the client, it doesn't feel like you're shouting from 50 yards out, and the client doesn't feel like they've only got one point. I don't know, because so often the clients want one person to speak to, and don't want all of the departments right here. But my thought is, I really think companies could help themselves tremendously if there were groupings of teams, smaller groups, so that no one was getting lost, from the client to the department heads, to the staffing, to the inventory, to the salespeople, to the collection people. And so rather than one person handling 3,000 accounts, you're building it from a series, smaller teams within an organization.
Yeah. Well, and even in some of these industries, and we talked about this before, I think a little bit last week, even in some of these industries like the construction, right, where it's typically has been in a slower moving market. And by that, I mean like innovations and changes happen a little bit slower. That's almost out the window now, because there's so much changing all the time, and it might not be specifically with how they fulfill with their clients and customers or whatever their specialties are, but it's how they go to market. How do they, like, operationally, how do they function within? How do they, like, marketing tactics, sales tactics, internal software functionality is advancing so fast, and it's so quick. So now there is a big difference between a company who stays nimble and adapts really quickly to those things and companies that don't. There's a huge difference now. It used to not be a huge thing, but now the difference is the company that stays nimble and is able to experiment, fail, but learn from it really, really quickly, and then find something that works and then hit it hard, right? So they will still stay flexible. They are so far ahead of companies that make big bets and make these big changes right away. Or sorry, they make big changes all at once, right? And they're not even sure if it's the right change because they weren't flexible enough to be able to make those little micro experiments or to partake in those little micro experiments. And you can't do that if you're a decentralized company where nobody speaks to each other and knows what each other's doing. I mean, I worked with a company who, when I first went in there, and they're not a big company either, like, especially and they're in the construction industry. They're not a huge business either, but most of these people in sales didn't have a freaking clue what customer service even did.
No idea. Or care.
Which is insane, which is absolutely insane, especially knowing what I know now is absolutely insane. So you're seeing a lot of these companies. This is the same with any industry.
Sure.
Construction, software, IT, fintech, financial tech, all these types of businesses. They're going towards the successful ones are nimble. They can make experiments, they can partake in experiments and not have to bet the house on them. They create space for allowing failure and then learning from it rapidly and quickly, finding what works really fast and then pushing it out. Right. And it's no different anymore in the construction industry because now there's all these sales platforms they can use. The CRMs are getting so crazy advanced. There's, communications softwares, like my good friend of mine, Ron Nussbaum. I just had him on the coffee club last week with BuilderCom, which is an amazing project management relations tool. But like that kind of, like, if you're not up to date with that kind of stuff and you're not testing these types of things and finding what works best for you, you're going to be left in the dust, absolutely left in the dust. So creating that space to allow for experimentation, and you can't do that if you're completely decentralized and nobody knows what they're doing. So these small pocketed teams, or even just one pocketed team that allows for that experimentation, is huge. It's huge, absolutely huge.
I think one of the nice parts, and folks, anybody, whether you're in the business or whether you happen to be a consumer or both, where it is you're relying on these products and services, and the construction industry, the home industries, the roofing industries, interiors, exteriors, these businesses continue to explode, which is nothing new. What is new, and you're talking about the Ron Nussbaums and the people that I have worked with and alongside of, is nobody is going to be able to survive using 1960s and 1970s no technology. They can't, and there's no reason to. There is, and really the blunt point is, there's too much money being made within these organizations, scaling these organizations, selling these organizations, and no one is going to accept things like, and I think we used this exact line last week, well, that's the way we always did business around here, Bob. You know what I mean? Folks, if you heard that last week, that's the chief reference to a prior episode. But there's too much money to be made and lost. And I can't get to your job because Zach didn't pay us. So now I can't afford to buy the inventory. Nothing personal, Zach. You know what I mean? And now I can't buy the inventory to do your fancy pants patio. So I'm going to have to wait until we collect. And the response is unanimously always the same, which is, that's great. And I'm now going to go to somebody else because I'm not waiting 15 minutes. So it's not just a matter of doing things fast, it's doing things right. How do you do things right? Have the resources to do it, have the systems in place, no bad surprises, and don't get swept up in a situation where you are desperate and having to chase people for money. So galvanize your teams, communicate the expectations, stay on top of the customers in a good way. In a good way. 5-star experiences are such a pleasure, such a privilege. You know, be the pain in a good way. You know, be the pain where the client knows where to get to you in 2 rings. They know they can get you. You know what I mean? They know exactly what's going on. They do pay you. They do pay you. Yeah. You know what I mean? They just do.
Sign up with so you can communicate with them really quickly.
Yeah.
There's my plug for Ron. But right. But to summarize for Mike, it was Mike, right?
Yep.
It was Mike Swabecker. Find out what that critical point is.
We love you, Mike. Find out
where that the cash flow issue is coming from, because cash flow, right, and the absence of a cash flow problem will solve a lot of other problems. But find out what that is, plug that hole, come back, create the process, make sure it doesn't happen again, and then find out where your focus needs to be. What is the most highest value activity for you? And then try to, even if it's just an assistant, a VA, whatever it is, if you don't already have something like that, if you already have one, get another one or get a better one, get one that works more hours, whatever it is. Offload as much as you can so you can start to focus on building those processes, staying on top of those cash flow materials, and vetting your subcontractors. And on top of that, the other thing that after you've delegated all these things and you have a little bit more time and bandwidth freed up, you want to ingrain that marketing, that trust-focused marketing throughout the entire process. Obviously, starting from the front, create a huge pool of proof, whether it's testimonials, pictures, content, whatever it is. You want people to be already having their credit card out or already filling out their finance information before the project's even started, right? And when you do that, it'll solve a lot of your cash issues right away there. And then ingrain those processes for follow-ups, for check-ins. Again, typical project management, setting milestones. What do those milestones look like per project? And creating that, again, that process there. And that'll help a lot with your cash flow problems, right? Because last thing you want to do is be chasing for people's money afterwards. You either didn't do it, you need to check on your background check. Like everybody should be getting, not everybody, but I think most people should be getting some sort of background check when it comes to, like, are they going to be able to pay me? Right. And if not, it should be an upfront, most upfront, and then as far as payment goes, half up front, half at the end, or whatever it is. Or again, finance. If you work with a couple finance companies, they will do that for you. They will do credit checks. They'll do all these types of things for you. And then they'll obviously create a better, an easier payment plan for your customers, and you get paid up front.
And you get paid up front. Yep.
Exactly. And again, keep an eye on those chops, right? You don't want to be working with one finance company and you get 12% taken off right away, right? And that just skyrockets your expenses, like absolutely crazy. And then from there, pick which one of those disciplines you're doing and either drop the other ones. I don't want to completely change your business plan right now, but drop some of the ones that aren't bringing in the money. They're more costs than they are lucrative, and focus. Like if you do beautiful patios and you only do some siding and some roofing and some windows, focus on custom patios. Be the best in town at that, right? It's going to be a lot easier to create that pool of proof. People aren't going to be confused when they go to your website or get referrals. Like, yeah, he did my windows, but he probably could have done great on my patio. I don't know, right? Be great at something. Be great at that one thing. You're better to go an inch wide, a mile deep when you're starting out than trying to do everything for everybody, right? So that's where I'd start. I know that was a lot, and that process might take a year that I just went through. That's where you want to start.
And that's the whole key, folks. Like I said, one of the things that we tend to do here is give you starting points and launch points, because look, all these problems evolve, change, grow. One of the things that we get to do is to say we get to take a top line view, and as things evolve and change, we evolve and change too. So, Zach Carlin, anything else that you feel like that we should add? I love it. All right, that never gets old for me. To have your background. My buddy went silent. But in the meantime, that's interesting what just took place. Folks, this is John Duffin here. I'm looking at my very communicative partner in crime, Summit Chasers Networks, Zach Carlin here. Folks, to everybody who chimed in, Audrina and Rosalie and Tommy, just to name a few, thanks so much for joining us live. We are thrilled that you joined us tonight. And folks, we get to do it again next Tuesday evening. Give me more hand signals so I can see the fireworks, brother. Boom. All right. Folks, have a great evening all. Much love. We will see you soon. Bye.